You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 156. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast. Now before I get started, I just want to remind you, this is coming at you on Tuesday the 26th of November. You know the week, it is Black Friday week. Yes, I'm doing it again this year because it's fun. I want to put some playful energy into it, and I have a couple of wonderful offerings. Now, I am going to be offering these to the people, the wonderful, lovely people on my email list first. I have one offer that is highly restricted. It's only going to be open for 48 hours from the 29th to the 30th of November. Restricted number of spots available for it too. I expect to sell out. So if you want to get your hands on one of these, if you've been thinking of working with me, now is the time to get on my list. You need to act to do this. Go to 90dayslater.co/BF. BF, yes, for Black Friday, and get on the list. Then you can get your hands on one of the offers. I will put them out on social after they've been with my list for a while, but I do expect them to sell out. So if you think now is your time to change your relationship with alcohol. If you've been listening to me for months, thinking I'm going to do that one day, make it today. All right, change one day into today. All right, enough of that. Enough of my ranting. You know what to do. Okay, so over the next few weeks, we're going to explore one of the most powerful tools you can use in your journey of becoming a mindful drinker. And this is understanding how you handle cravings. But I'm going to tackle this in a somewhat different way, in a more detailed and personalized way. Because I have been looking in my work, there are 4 main ways I find that people respond to cravings. And today I'm going to introduce you these 4, what I'm going to call the craving responses. I'm going to sort of outline them in the round, if you like, and give you some questions and things to think about so you can start seeing how you're showing up. And then over the next following 4 weeks, we're going to dig into each of these in some level of depth. Right, so here first of all are the 4 different responses to cravings that I see routinely. We have the fighter. Next we have the baffled. We have the narrator. And then we have the scientist. Now, what I'm going to offer is that everybody has their default response. And you might be a mixture of one of these types. And that's as it is. But the key thing, I think, is to recognize, I really want you to start to recognize your go-to type, right? What is your most often default response? Because once you understand that, once you understand how you're reacting and responding, it becomes so much easier to resolve cravings in a way that aligns with your goals and that aligns up with your personality and with, the identity of the person and who you're becoming. And that's what we're all about, right? Helping you to achieve your ideal drinking habits and patterns. As I often say, I'm not prescriptive on this. The relationship with alcohol that is right for you is for you to decide. You're a grown human adult. I trust you to be able to figure out what that is. And with my help, I'm very happy to do that. Right. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to dive deeper into each of these types. But today, let's just introduce them. And I want to help you to start thinking really about how you tend to handle cravings. But before we do that, let's just talk briefly about why it is so important to understand this. Right, to understand your current default response. Well, here's the thing. Cravings aren't just these random feelings that come from nowhere, right? You're not just going about your day and then all of a sudden, boom, a craving is upon you. Although I know that's how it can seem until you start to become very conscious of them. Cravings are actually just come from our thoughts. And I want you to think about that for a moment, right? Your cravings, if they're coming from your thoughts, that means your cravings are not facts, right? They're just thoughts, which means you can manage them, right? It's not a fact that you're going to have a craving at a certain time. It really isn't. It just might be that you're in a bit of a habit pattern to do that. So there's a lot of automatic programming that is going on, and I know you've heard me talk about this before, but really there's going to be a whole lot more of it than you could even imagine. I love it. I love my job. I love when I'm coaching people and I'm listening and I can hear the words they're talking, right? These are words just coming out of their mouth, and I'm able to play that back to them, and they don't even realize sometimes what they're saying. And this is a positive thing, right? Because we're then able to see it. Then once we have the awareness, then we're able to do something about it. So again, back to the idea that our cravings come from our thoughts, and that means we can manage them because we are the ones responsible, wholly responsible. In fact, it is one of the few things in life for which we do have 100% total responsibility is our thoughts. But here's where most of us get stuck. Well, to start with, we're not even really aware that we're having the thoughts or that we control them. But even when we get to that step, we then don't often pause to examine the thoughts, right? We kind of accept them. We agree with them. We kind of think that's our brain just reporting the news to us. We don't always recognize them as just thoughts, as just opinions. Instead, we experience them as powerful, right? And then if we have this desire for some wine, we're having some thoughts. It could be just something as simple as, I want that. We then experience that in our body as a powerful urge, a powerful craving that we either have to resist or give into, right? And I've talked about this before, the different ways of responding to cravings. But the problem is, when we don't examine those thoughts, we're at the mercy of our own reactions. But when you take the time to understand how you're wired and how you tend to be wired to handle cravings, again, what your default reaction is, whether it's by fighting them off, getting lost in confusion, telling yourself a story, or analyzing them, you will gain the upper hand. Right? So once you know your go-to craving response, you can create a strategy that works for you. And that's what is my pleasure to help you do. Right? So that's what we're going to start with today. So let's dive into these 4 types. Now remember, you may notice a little bit of each of them in yourself, depending on the situation. There is certainly a circumstantial angle to this. But there's usually one of the 4 that tends to stand out more as your default response, right? So look out for that. All right, here they are. So first we have the fighter. This person sees cravings as an enemy to fight. When a craving hits, they engage in a battle of wills, determined to resist it at all costs. The idea is that they must beat the craving, and anything less than that feels like failure. Next, we have the baffled. This person is often confused when cravings hit. It's as if the cravings come out of nowhere and they're left wondering and asking why. Why am I feeling this way? Why is this happening again? The baffled does not always know how to handle them and can feel overwhelmed or lost or not sure what to do next. Right? This is where you really can feel very stuck. Our third response type is the narrator. Now, this person tells himself a story when a craving arises. It could be a story of justification. It could be a narrative that explains why they should drink or why they deserve it. These thoughts could sound something like, I've had a long week, I deserve this, or maybe everyone else is drinking, why shouldn't I? The narrator's craving is often accompanied by a running internal dialogue. Last, we have the scientist. This person approaches cravings with curiosity. Instead of just reacting, they observe and analyze what's happening. They may wonder, what triggered this craving? Or why do I want this right now? They treat cravings like an experiment. They're examining patterns and looking for solutions. Now, like I say, the goal is to understand your natural tendency. That's all we're after this week. And I want you to see how that aligns with your ideal response to cravings, right? If you could choose any response to cravings, which would you want and where are you currently starting? And that's what we're going to explore in more depth in the coming weeks. Now, maybe just hearing me talk about these summaries has given you some idea, but let's take a moment to really explore what each type might look like in your own life. And I'm doing this through a series of questions. So I want you to listen to these questions and reflect on your thoughts around them and your responses. You might even want to grab a pen and paper to jot down some ideas that come to you. So let's start again with the fighter. If you resonate with the fighter, you might often feel like you're at war with your cravings, right? Fighting them can sometimes feel empowering, but other times it might feel exhausting or like a constant uphill battle. Here are some questions for you to consider. What does your inner dialogue sound like when a craving hits? Do you feel like you need to fight against it or resist it hard? When you experience a craving, do you tend to push yourself to avoid it at all costs? And how does that usually make you feel afterwards? Do you view cravings as something you need to just overcome? And how does that approach impact your success in the moment? Finally, have you noticed if fighting a craving ever makes them stronger or weaker for you? Now let's move on to the baffled. I love that word, baffled. If you identify with being baffled, then cravings might catch you off guard and you might feel unsure of how to respond. Right? It's like you're walking through your day and then suddenly, boom, a craving hits and you're left wondering what on earth just happened. So here are some questions for you to consider if you think this is you. When you feel a craving, do you sometimes find yourself confused or unsure of how to handle it? How often do you wonder why you are craving something, especially if it feels like it's out of your control? When cravings strike, do you feel overwhelmed or lost without knowing what to do next, i.e. there's a knowledge skills gap? And how do you typically react then in those moments? Have you ever found that your craving just came out of nowhere, right? Leaving you puzzled or unsure what to do next or how to deal with it? Let's move on to the third category. If you're the narrator, then your cravings might be wrapped up in a story you tell yourself. Maybe you feel justified in drinking because of everything you've been through, maybe in your past or even in just the last couple of hours. Or maybe you tell yourself that just one won't hurt. Right, one more won't hurt. The story you tell yourself can be a powerful influence or whether or not you give in and you recognize that, right? That your words are influential. Here are the questions for you to mull over if you think this is you. When you experience a craving, do you tend to talk to yourself, right, about why you're craving alcohol? I used to do that all the time. Do you have a story you tell yourself when cravings arise? And how does that story shape your behavior or choices, right, before the craving and during and after? Are there certain thoughts or beliefs about alcohol that you tend to repeat to yourself when you're tempted? And finally, how does the narrative you've built around your cravings affect your ability to resist them and to get on with your day? Finally, let's look at the scientist. If you're the scientist, cravings are really something to observe and analyze. You might even find yourself taking a step back to assess why the craving is happening, what triggered it, and how you can handle it differently next time. For the scientist, cravings are more about curiosity than fear or resistance. Now, I will tell you, this is the category that we want to be aiming for. Now, you might feel a long way off from this. It's totally fine. We can get you there. Or maybe you are closer than you think. Maybe you can access a piece of this already in yourself. So here are some questions to kind of tease that out from yourself. When you feel a craving, do you tend to approach it like a puzzle or an experiment? Are you trying to understand what triggered it instead of judging? How often do you find yourself analyzing the craving? asking things like what caused it, why is it happening, and how you can respond in a more measured way. And you aren't just asking these questions, you are answering them for yourself too. Do you notice patterns in your cravings, and do you approach them as an opportunity to learn something new about yourself? And then finally, when a craving comes up, do you try to collect data or evidence, right, that challenges your urge to drink the next time, right? So you are arming yourself with information and insight for the next time the craving pattern arises. Those are the hallmarks of the scientist. So now you've had a chance to reflect on the 4 types. I want you to think about which one resonates with you most right now, at least right now in this moment. Do you find yourself fighting cravings, feeling baffled, narrating a story, or analyzing the situation? If you're not sure, that's okay. Right? Cravings, like I said, can look different depending on the context. But next week, we're going to dive deeper into one of these types. And as we do this, we're going to explore some practical tools and strategies for managing the cravings more effectively, right? For those different categories. But before we close today, I encourage you to pay attention this week to how you actually do respond to cravings. So for instance, you might think, well, actually, Anna, I sound like I'm a fighter. That's me. But then as you go through the week, maybe you're finding that you're asking yourself you're just more confused. You really do think the cravings are coming from nowhere. So maybe you're showing more elements of the baffled. And again, this isn't about labeling ourselves. This is about categorizing so that we're able to see what are some of the good practical strategies forward to have you making progress, because there are different strategies for each of these different types. But like I say, your homework for this week is to just start to be more aware of this. Awareness is the first step to change. Okay, so that's it for today's episode, short and sweet. I hope this exploration of the 4 types of cravings has starting to help you understand your own responses a bit more and has whet your appetite to learn more in detail over the next 4 weeks. This is so important because the more you understand your natural reactions, the easier it will be to manage them. So like I say, next week we're going to start doing a deep dive into one of these, so make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out. And please, if you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to share it with someone who might benefit from it. And if you're ready to take your mindful drinking journey to the next level, feel free to reach out to me. I offer one-on-one coaching. And like I said at the top of the podcast, I have some specials coming up. One of them will be 48 hours long only. So you want to be on my list, you want to get access, because if you want to drink less, this is also an opportunity to do that while spending less on the coaching at the same time. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, understanding your cravings is the first step towards mastering them. I can't wait to explore this topic more with you. So I will see you next week. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.